everyone, and welcome to today's Textile Talk. My name is Lucy Shakin, and I'm SAQA's Communications Coordinator and your Textile Talks organizer. Textile Talks are brought to you by the International Quilt Museum, Quilt Alliance, Studio Art Quilt Associates, or SAQA, and Surface Design Association. We love bringing you these free programs every week, thanks to the support of our sponsors and contributions from viewers like you. If you enjoyed Textile Talks, please consider making a donation at saqa.com/TT support. A few Zoom notes before we begin. This is a webinar, so we can't see or hear you, but we can read your comments in the chat. We have enabled Zoom's closed captions feature. If you prefer not to view captions, you should be able to turn them off by finding the CC or Live Captions button or going into your settings. If you have questions during today's program, please type them into the Q&A function. And if you have suggestions for ways we can improve or for topics you'd like to see in future textile talks, please let us know in the post-event survey. I'd like to take a moment to tell you a little bit about what's going on in SAQA right now. SAQA is an international membership organization with about 4,300 members. We're a welcoming community of artists, curators, collectors, and anyone who loves art quilts and fiber arts. Viewers of Textile Talks can get $20 off the first year of a new membership with code TALKS, that's TALKS. You can learn more about membership and join us at saqa.com/join. Each year we present a conference, and this year it will be a virtual conference showcasing artists in the Europe and Middle East region. We're proud to present speakers from 16 countries across the region. Our keynote speakers are Kinga Foldi and Susie Koren. Kinga Foldi is a Hungarian textile artist who creates enchanting flora and fauna shapes through the meticulous application of pin tucks. Kinga's art speaks to us on a deeper human level through a language that we all share, our feelings, desires, and struggles. Susie Koren from Sussex, England, is interested in the profound connection between people and land. She uses layers of earth pigments from the Roussillon ochre quarries, as well as adaptive stitch and other expressive tactile elements. As an urban dweller, Esther Bornamisa has collaged with city maps for over 20 years. Fragments of new and old and real and imaginary settlement plans make us think about our roots and our ongoing search for identity. Beverly Ailing-Smith is interested in complex topics like memory, emotion, loss, and grief. Her latest research and exhibition examines how we remember, revisit, and refine the past. Italian couple Dams, Daniela Arnaldi and Marco Sarzi Sartori, create enormous installations. Their work really defies categorization. It straddles sculpture and design, abstract and figurative. They'll be interviewed by artist Ramona Conconi. Finnish textile artist Raija Jokinen uses flax, dyed fiber drawing, and embroidery to create fascinating work. Her art often relates to nature, the human body, and emotions. Despite having a fragile appearance, Raija's art is durable and strong. She sees this as a metaphor for resilience. Susan Hotchkiss is from the Scottish Highlands. She explores the beauty in the processes of aging and decay. She creates textile art saturated with color, print, and stitch. Those are just some of our featured speakers, and I'd encourage you to look them up after today's talk because they are all phenomenal, innovative artists. We'll also have studio tours, panel discussions, artist talks, and chances to network and make friends with the other attendees from around the world. The conference will take place from April 12th to 20th, and attendees will have unlimited replays of the recorded materials for 3 months. We'll hope you join us for over 20 hours of inspiring content spread out in bite-sized sessions over 9 days. All of the information is at saqa.com/virtual, and the conference is open to everyone. So now I'm very pleased to welcome today's guests, Tom Grotta and Rhonda Brown of browngrotta Arts, which is a contemporary art gallery showcasing textiles and multimedia work. We have Tom in front of the camera today and Rhonda behind the scenes. So Tom, if you could start your video and unmute for us at this point. Museum quality artworks by more than 100 artists from 25 countries are represented through gallery exhibitions, art fairs, co-partnerships with museums and retail spaces, and an online gallery. There you are, Tom. Browngrotta Arts has published more than 50 art catalogs featuring Tom's photographs and design and Rhonda's editorial oversight. The firm has placed works in private and corporate collections in the US and abroad, including the permanent collections of the Metropolitan Museum of Art, Museum of Arts and Design, the Art Institute of Chicago, Philadelphia Museum of Art, and the Renwick Gallery of the Smithsonian American Art Museum. The curators regularly work with architects and interior designers, offering consultation for commissioned artworks and site-specific installation for commercial and residential spaces. So, Tom and Rhonda, I'm going to turn things over to you now. Thank you so much for being here today. Please go ahead and share your screen and start your presentation.
Okay.
To Zoom to share your
Do I have to go back to share my screen?
Yeah.
Oops, no, okay, this is okay.
Yes, you do.
You were back to where's my share my screen? My screen was shared.
No.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
Okay, there we go. I hit share and I hit go and I hit play.
Okay.
Okay. It's just me talking. I guess my wife decided to sit in the background, but she'll be there for any questions at the end. I want to thank you all for inviting browngrotta Arts for this talk. I thought we'd share our history promoting fiber arts for more than 30 years, the changes we've observed over that time, and our approach and our response to the changes that we have seen. This is actually the first brochure we ever produced on our first show. browngrotta Arts began as a side hustle in 1987. I ran a small ad agency with my wife, Rhonda, who was studying law at the time. We had very little furniture when we relocated from New York City to Connecticut. So we installed artwork in our house and invited people to come see it. And as parties, appointments, whatever, and we called it Art in Use. We showed paintings, photography, textile works, and some ceramics. But we quickly discovered two things. People weren't willing to buy paintings from a suburban Connecticut home, especially with New York galleries nearby at the time. And fiber work, unlike paintings, was not well represented on the East Coast. So we decided to focus on that, and we thought we could do it well. We were already showing some fiber work, paper baskets by Mary Merkel Hess that you can see on the left, willow works by Markku Kosonen from Finland, you can see in the foreground, and wool tapestries by Marriott Rousseau Vermette, brushed wool tapestries from Canada. The work was new and interesting to clients and to us. We did some research, invited other artists of interest, like Catherine Westphal and Ed Rosbach, Kay Sekamachi and her husband, woodturner Bob Stocksdale, which helped attract more male collectors at the time, since at the time, we couldn't get them to show up. And their husbands would complain to them once they finally came to our show saying, how come you've never invited me to this space? Since then, we sell equally to both genders, but that has changed over time. We added basket makers like Shinj Laki, who did the red wire basket in the center of the table, and Leon Niehaus in the back at White Oak, as well as tapestry artist Elena Hernmark. My parents, my mother here pictured, including the Marriott Rousseau Vermette in the upper left-hand corner above the fireplace, collected craft and textiles at the time. So I had a lot of exposure in the field. I would go with them on New York to weekends to look at shows. My parents were very involved in the American Craft Museum and eventually become the Museum of Art and Design. My mother was when she was alive, I think the longest living board member on the board there. My mother was a talented and opinionated interior designer, and I guess I got the opinionated part from her as it rubbed off on me. She encouraged her clients to collect art and contemporary furniture, and sharing her aesthetic, she helped us place many of our artists' works amongst her clients' homes and collections, and we hoped others would follow suit. In finding and persuading artists to work with us, Marriott Rousseau Vermette was very generous. Oops, what?
That's right. You go.
With her suggestions, recommendations, and contacts. And so were her friends Jack Leonard Larson of Larson Fabrics, who later founded Longhouse Reserve in East Hampton. Larson was an expert on the contemporary fiber movement, having co-curated the wall hangings exhibition at the Museum of Modern Art in 1969, and co-written the seminal books in the field, which we still use to this day, and were a huge inspiration in our early development of deciding who we're going to represent, Beyond Craft, Art of the Fabric, and the Art Fabric Mainstream. In fact, in our upcoming show, we have several pieces there from these books. The recommendations and the fact that artists wanted me to photograph and publish their work in our catalogs was also a plus. And happily, very few artists ever shut us down. Over the years, we've exhibited the pioneers, Sophia Butramowitz, Sheila Hicks, Francois Grisson, Richard Jacoby, over 100 artists in all. We began focusing on contemporary fiber art. The medium was not even 50 years old. We took a revolutionary approach to what had been mostly a pictorial conservative medium by taking textiles off the loom and creating works of fiber that hung off the wall or in space. Tapestries became dimensional. The piece on the left by Sheila, actually, we sold to the St. Louis Museum of Art. And in the center, the Lenore Tawney. I learned what tennis elbow was. I sort of laughed at her when she told me about how difficult it was to install, but it was 81 knots on top of scaffolding that had to be released for that piece to float off the ceiling. That said, we may not have chosen the best time to emphasize fiber art. In the 60s and the 70s, the early years, work was dimensional and sculptural, different and popular. Made mostly by women, feminist art was also trendy. But by the 80s, when we jumped in, the popularity had begun to dim. The 90s and the early 2000s were hard for fiber art. Slick and shiny were popular in both architecture and design. The debate about craft versus art was raging. Women's work, like weaving, knitting, and crochet, was now discounted. Some public fiber commissions from the 70s were poorly cared for and gave fiber a bad name, like this dramatic work called Legs by Barbara Shawcroft from the Bar train station in San Francisco. It was 50 feet tall and 7,000 pounds. It was cleanable, but at a considerable cost. And eventually it was removed. The 80s and 90s saw few museum shows and several galleries closed their doors in California, Detroit, and Santa Fe. But we persevered through those years with our unusual business model. We attended art fairs like this one in Florida and SOFA in Chicago and in New York. In the 90s, we began publishing catalogs for each of our exhibitions. This is actually the cover of our 50th catalog, where we actually have the covers of all 50 of the first catalogs that we produced on the cover. In fact, if we even sell a puzzle with this picture. Catalogs were a rarity for fiber exhibitions. In the 90s and the 2000s, they were rarely a budget for a catalog, and even if there was, photography and printing was expensive, and there were very few pictures. We also noted that fiber was rarely well photographed. People photograph fiber like paintings many times at the direction of the curators, with 245-degree lights flattening the work and de-emphasizing the texture. Even though this would hold the color fidelity, it often lost the three-dimensional qualities of what, in my mind, makes fiber sing. But since most museum and galleries didn't even have a budget to print in color, that was also lost as well. I made a point of trying to photograph the work, emphasizing its three-dimensional qualities, as well as referencing some sense of scale. I would show some texture, perhaps a molding, a window, a shadow, rarely a plain white background. I think that my ad agency foot the bill for necessary photography and in-house printing equipment I use to produce our catalogs, especially as technologies continue to change. And our new catalogs, like this is one of the recent ones, we also show details of more than one image, which is something we even do on our website. We also partner with art venues, exhibitions when we could. In 2006, we worked in a gallery in Greenwich to show international art textiles. Mildred Constantine, the former textile curator at the Museum of Modern Art, called our exhibition Beyond Weaving International Art Textiles the most important fiber exhibition in 15 years. The fact that a 6-week library show could be that significant tells you much of what you need to know about the status of the medium at the time. We were able to install works geographically. Here you can see Scandinavian works on the top and North American below, which included works from Sheila Hicks and Lenore Tawney. But slowly in the early 2000s, fibers began to improve. Appreciation for natural materials increased, as did appreciation for the handmade. Sheila Hicks had an exhibition of miniatures at Bard College in 2006, Ruth Asawa retrospective at the De Young in San Francisco in 2007, and 50 years of Sheila Hicks opened at the Addison in Massachusetts, followed by the Mint Museum in Charlotte, and finally the ICA in Boston in 2010. Contemporary fiber art, a selection from the permanent collection, was shown at the Art Institute of Chicago, then the largest public collection of textiles in the country. The watershed moment for contemporary fiber art was just 4 years away. In 2014, Janelle Porter, who had worked on 50 years of Sheila Hicks, organized the expansive ICA show, Fiber Sculpture 1960 to the Present. The exhibition traveled to Columbus, Ohio, produced a detailed sold-out book, and Porter was awarded Best Museum Exhibition of the Year. We followed with our own look at fiber in the last 50 years, influence and evolution, fiber sculpture then and now. As much as we love the ICA exhibition and the fact that it included so many artists we represented, we included newer artists that we thought ICA missed, like this on the cover of our catalog, Federico Luzzi from Italy, as well as highlighting additional pioneering artists who worked in the 60s and 70s, and especially works from Eastern Europe, which ICA show minimized. Internationally, it was like a dam had broken. Ann Wilson, Louise Bourgeois, and Lenore Tawney were featured in thread lines at the Drawing Center in 2014 in New York. Richard Tuttle unveiled a vast installation of weavings at Tate Modern in London, followed by an exhibition of textiles by Sonia Delaunay in 2015. And in mainstream media, the art newspaper declared soft fabrics had solid appeal, and the Wall Street Journal called fiber the art world's new obsession. Besides the rediscovery of fiber and a new appreciation for the handmade, since the mid-2010s, we've seen another trend propel and sustain fiber art's acceptance. That is, the art experience has become democratized thanks to the internet. As improved quality images, as well as greater bandwidth and accessibility have grown, all-dimensional art, including fiber art, has benefited, as you can now see details online. The internet has moved art viewing from an elite experience to one that is available to all. Art lovers now find work by scrolling the internet from the Google homepage to museums' digitized collections. Pinterest users compile images of artwork they find everywhere. Online art sales have quadrupled between 2019 and 2021. Art lovers no longer approach art chronologically, as museums require, or by movement or medium, or by fine art versus decorative art. Galleries and museums are no longer the gatekeepers. Current art viewers have no patience for exclusionary labels like fine art or conceptual art. They just like what they like, and the pandemic sent people looking for art closer to home, not just waiting to visit in big cities. And we have personally seen a huge spike of local visitors to our space since the pandemic. This trend is evident in what galleries exhibit too. It wasn't many years ago that an art fair we attended posted large signs dividing fine art from the section that housed glass, ceramics, and other mediums. Our booth was near the signs that said fine art on one side and decorative art on the other. We literally saw people turn abruptly rather than look at something they considered less than fine art. Quite a contrast to Art Basel booths, like the one above, where a mix of media generally included at least one work of fiber art. And if you believe the press, they highlight fiber art as some of the most exciting works on the floor. Greater democratization has also meant a move to include women and artists from underrepresented groups. The reopening of MoMA in 2019 was announced with a reimagined approach to its presentation of modern and contemporary art. A large work by the newly popular Indian textile artist Mrinalini Mukherjee held center court here in the center. The new MoMA planned to add 5 times as many women artists as before, eliminate departments, and promise displays that would mix painting, sculpture, photography, architecture, design in new ways. The change is a plus for those of us working in the textiles and fiber sculpture. We are no longer hidden in the design or the costume departments. On Artsy, a platform that promotes galleries and artwork, there are thousands of galleries. Currently, only 8% feature more women artists than men. Proudly, browngrotta Arts is amongst the 8%. We expect that number to grow. Ten years later, fiber art's popularity continues. The Art Institute of Chicago is hosting Thread Visions Contemporary Weaving from the collection, which includes works by Jens Bassler, Leah Cook, Olga Diamaral, Eduardo Portillo, and Maria Davila, which is pictured in the detail here, that runs through August. Subversive, skilled, and sublime fiber art by women, which offers an alternative history of American art, will open the Smithsonian American Art Museum in May. It features 34 artworks by, amongst others, Faith Ringwald, Miriam Shapiro, Emma Amos, Adela Eckers, Joyce Scott, Louise Nez, Catherine Westphal, and the Leah Cook that's pictured here. Not this one, but a similar one. And Woven Histories, Textiles, and Modern Abstraction. Currently at the Los Angeles Contemporary Museum of Art, it will travel to the National Gallery in DC in March and then to MoMA in 2025. Not so many years ago, you would never find fiber art at the National Gallery. This exhibition and companion book has been several years in the making. They came to us several years ago to ask about Ed Rosbach and ended up using this piece in the photo, which we placed at Longhouse. The book, which is available on our website, was picked by the New York Times as one of the best new art books of 2023. In June, Art in America declared fiber is the new painting, pointing to a younger generation of artists weaving and sewing personal histories. Last September, the New York Times announced that fiber is finally being taken seriously. The article reminded readers that Sheila Hicks, who had been at MoMA's window 54 years ago at the wall hangings exhibition. In addition to changes in the art world, we would argue that fiber art's popularity is also due to the unique characteristics of the medium itself. It's distinct from paintings and photographs in ways that appeal to viewers. One characteristic is that it's handmade and tactile. Many of the works appear nearly perfect from a distance, but on closer inspection, the evidence of human involvement, intimate and singular, is visible. Pictured here is a coconut fiber weaving by Romanian artist Richie Jacobi on the left, and the large pussy willow basket is by the late Markku Kosonen from Finland on the right, who's the first basket maker we ever represented. Fiber art, as we define it, incorporates fibrous materials like wool, silk, willow, and also work that uses textile techniques like woven copper or paper. People are fascinated with the materials fiber artists use. Works made of recycled fabrics and found objects, pine needles, fiber optic cable, book pages, videotapes, stainless steel mesh, or jute, just to name a few. On the top slide in the upper left-hand corner is a dyed and stitched fish scale work by Dutch artist Marian Belinga. Next to that is a heavily layered painted woven work by American artist Louis Noss, followed by a mica and steel hanging by Finnish artist Anita Hoban. And on the top right is a dimensional wool tapestry by Canadian artist Micheline Bouchemont. And on the bottom left is a fiber optic weaving by Wilmerit Sigan from Poland, a stitched fish skin work by a commercial fisherwoman artist, Annette Bellamy from Alaska. She fishes in the summer and makes art in the winter. A suspended stonework by British artist Dale Bahana. And then finally, a fiber wrap basket around a carved wood armature by Stephanie Jacques from Belgium. Here are some more examples. On the top left is a safety pin wall hanging by American-Japanese artist Tamika Kawada. The detail next to that is by Dominic Demers, one of his morning stations, a freestanding sculpture of stitched hawthorn branches, paper, silk, bone, bird's eggs, and feathers. A woven steel tapestry by Kyoko Kamai from Japan. A seaweed basket by Dutch-American artist Jeanette Lennerstedt. And on the bottom left is a lacquered woven newspaper work by Toshio Sekiji from Japan, a lead weaving by UK artist Sue Lauti, a silk viscose thread painting by Ulla Maja Vikman from Finland, and an electroplated steel woven wall sculpture by Korean artist Jin Suk So. With the materials and techniques used in fiber art, there are striking shapes and effects that artists can achieve. The works are sculptural and dimensional in ways paintings and photographs are not. I regularly tell my customers, if you want a painting, go ahead and buy one. If you want something that extends from the wall or incorporates shadow, consider a work of fiber. On the top left is the heaviest fiber piece we've ever had, is a large sculpture, rope sculpture by Japanese artist Mario Yagi, a freestanding jute work by Naoko Serino, just the opposite of heavy, to two willow and seagrass sculptures by Canadian artist Dawn McNutt, and a large willow wall sculpture by Stephanie Jacques from Belgium that hangs on three little nails. And on the bottom, we have a black shield by Italian artist Federico Luzzi, she calls macrame. The red wool book tapestry is brushed wool by Marriott Rousseau Vermette from Canada. The black winged figure is a mixed media crocheted work titled Baggage by American artist Norma Minkowitz, showing that women carry all the weight, you can see on the bottom, followed by a steel, linen, cotton, and jeweler's thread woven sculpture by Polish artist Lila Kuka. Another aspect of fiber art that attracts collectors is that so many techniques are used. People are familiar with the techniques, whether it's knitting, crocheting, quilting, plaiting, and weaving, but not all are aware of the unexpected ways in which they are applied. The first detail from an interlaced cedar basket is by Sakajek Sekijima from Japan. She's known for constantly experimenting with different natural materials and different techniques. Next to that is a folded cotton work by French artist Simone Felpen, who uses thousands of pins to hold her folds together. No glues, no stitching. Even the x-rays of her works are interesting, which show the internal metal patterns of the pins. The fine embroidery of Asa Leonis of Norway on the bottom left. We are quite happy when she moved away from stitching rubber, which was really quite beautiful. However, rubber over time disintegrates, so we are thrilled that she is finally working on linen instead. And the early works of Leah Cook on the right, who stitched, painted, and pounded this piece. There are more techniques illustrated here. On the top left is a dendroglyph woven basket by the late American artist Dorothy Gill Barnes. Dorothy would mark trees in advance of her harvest to let nature play a part in the scarring of the bark before the weaving the basket. The carved recycled plastics and tied willow frame wall work is by American artist John McQueen, illustrating his concern about how nature and man can coexist. This organic basket titled Complex Plating, an understatement, I think, is by Japanese basket maker Nori Hatakeyama. It is one of those pieces that begs the question, when did she know she was finished? The crocheted wire and glass piece, the glass is tough to see because it's kind of clear, but the hard metal chair form you can see muted in the background through the glass is by Canadian artist Carol Frave. On the bottom left is a burnt paper and steel sculpture form by Hideo Tanaka. And the natural indigo weaving is woven on an obi loom, and then Japanese artist Chioko Tanaka would grind her fabric with either stone, sometimes using mud and brick to add texture to the surface. The late American artist Judy Mulford would interview her gourds on the vine before choosing to buttonhole stitch them with personal photographs and antique items that she had collected to tell her personal stories. And on the bottom right is an American artist, Wendy Wall, uses encyclopedia pages to make large and small wall and floor standing sculptures. As this audience knows well, works of fiber art can appeal to viewers on a deeply emotional level. You can actually measure the difference in the reaction that people have to fiber works. One of the artists we work with, Leah Cook, did a residency at the University of Pittsburgh Medical School in the neurology department. As part of her work, she measured people's brainwaves when people look at her tapestries and when they look at photographs that inspire them. Sure enough, different parts of the brain light up when people look at her tapestries than when they look at the photographic images. The theory why this is so, cloth is part of our earliest memories, and those are triggered by viewing tapestries, fabric, and other fiber items in ways that photos do not. This is a wonderful article if you want to get more about that. This was in the Textile Forum. Besides our emphasis on fiber art, a few things set browngrotta arts apart. One is the link between concept and technique. The artists we work with are intentional in learning about what came before, educating themselves and innovating from the space of knowledge. Whether it's Czechoslovakian artist Lubakrechi, who did the piece on the detail of the piece on the upper left-hand corner when she's was not working on her crazy hats, which she created her own needlework technique to make this piece. The Slovenian artist Anda Klanček, who created three-dimensional figures with a sewing machine using techniques that she has patented. To Nori Hatakeyama, plating paper tape in an unexpected way, pictured here with a work that is so big, I'm not sure she knows how to get it out the door. It's probably a reason why we don't currently have it. British artist Peter Collingwood inventing shaft weaving, and American artist James Bassler updating Peruvian for selvage weaving. Another difference in our approach is that we've always been an international gallery. Probably one of the things that really makes us stand out amongst most dealers in the field. Due to expense and logistics, many galleries don't show work from a variety of regions. Fiber art is important in Europe, Asia, South America, United States, and the UK. Originally, we felt it was essential to show US audiences work from those regions. Now we show works globally. In this slide, there's work from the United States, from Poland, Denmark, UK, Japan, Venezuela, France, Norway, Korea, Israel, Italy, and Russia. You probably noticed that I've mentioned many of the artists as I've gone through where they're from, because it's a really big part of what we do. Just like our collectors are from all over the world, so are our artists, and you no longer have people who just walk in the door and artists who live around the corner. They are from all over the place. New for fiber art, of growing importance to us and especially our aging customers, is the growing market for resale. A few years ago, fiber art rarely came up at auction, and when it did, the prices were embarrassingly low, even when you add the 30% commission that auction houses add on top of it. That has changed as fiber art's profile has improved. Prices have increased ever since the work of Ruth Asawa garnered $1 million at auction, which has encouraged more collectors to sell their works. Last year, we worked with more than a dozen collectors, estates, and auction houses. We promoted strong and important resale works by Dominic DeMayer, Ann Wilson, Jane Sauer, Cynthia Shera, Gerhard Nodell, and others, with good results. We're excited we are getting new exposure to accomplished artists like Gary Trentenham and Glenn Kaufman, who deserve renewed attention. Pictured here on the left are details of 3 quivers, 3 out of 4 by Gary Trentenham. The shrine in the center is by Dominic DeMayer, and the early weaving on the right is by Gerhard Nodell. Our primary goal has always been to increase exposure and appreciation for fiber art. One way we do this is by promoting a multitude of ways for clients to display their art. Stairwells are a place that often look to place art, or in this case, Dawn McNutt's sculpture, tall enough with no bad angles so you can walk around as you go up and down the stairs. This is a 9-foot willow sculpture. Fireplaces are another place we often are asked about, even though we have to be careful if it's an active fireplace, as that limits the options. For this client, 2-sided Idaho fireplace, he commissioned 2 Dale Behenna steel rope wall hangings. On the side pictured are 53 steel rope balls plus 1 stainless steel one. On the opposite side of the fireplace, the reverse, 53 stainless steel balls plus 1 black one. And again, it all hangs from the ceiling. In most cases, our clients reserve just 1 row of their bookcase to line with art and the rest with books. In this case, the client was attracted to work made of everyday objects. It took a year of back and forth and digital placements to develop this collection out of street signs, tape measures, printed pages, maps, paper, safety pins, birch bark, dollar bills, etc., which began a larger collection throughout the home. And it took another year for her husband to notice that the shelves in his bedroom were full. We often suggest fiber art to designers to solve design problems, such as UV and rammed earth walls. Everybody always wants to put the most important piece of art in front of the big picture window, even though it will not survive over time. This steel weaving by Kyoko Kamai on the left is on a wall with direct sunlight. It reflects the light into the room and it will not fade. The Marriott Rousseau Vermette tapestry is stretched using Velcro to wrap around a curved wall. And the Sarah Brennan tapestry was commissioned to cover a flat screen TV. Not only is it beautiful, it absorbs sound, unlike the ugly reflective surface of a television. This has become more popular, unfortunately, as many of the most important picture walls are now covered by that TV. Another way we expand exposure for fiber art is through commissions. Here are 2 recent paper sculpture commissions by Jennifer Linson, a residential Nantucket living room wall work on the left, and one of 2 works on 2 different elevator banks at an apartment lobby in Singapore. I'm just glad they installed it instead of me, since the pins had to go through concrete. We've worked with many collectors on commissions, but newer projects involve collaborations between fiber artists and designers to create or inspire light fixtures, furniture, and high-end housewares. You may read about the G's Bend Quilters collaboration with Target. Jiro Yanazawa's work on the left here was inspired by Loewe, the people who make purses, to make door stops mimicking his bamboo technique with leather. They also have handbags, similar technique as well, but basically they're doing with leather what he did with bamboo. And on the right is an initial drawing for a 7-foot in diameter light fixture that a designer hopes to cover with a hand-woven textile. He's just really interested in how the textile will reflect the openings in the textile surfaces on the ceiling of the space. And this is for a luxury hotel. Virtual installation is another way we use to try to build our customer base. We also use virtual installation to assist clients to envision work in their own spaces. We find this work quite well with people more accustomed to buying two-dimensional work. By installing it digitally to scale, they get a very good idea of what it will look like in real life, increasing their comfort level to purchase works in the first place. The two pictures on the left were actually the digital placements I used to help sell the piece that was installed on the right. This is an incredible piece by Adele Eckers that looks completely different from every angle that one looks at it. There were actually even more digital placements because I had to show the left view, the right view, and the center view, but it's amazing how you can't almost tell the difference. Because new clients are more likely to find us by chance, the most important lesson we've learned in response to the changes of the last decade is that we need to market absolutely everywhere, much to my exhaustion. It's time-consuming, but necessary. We have 4 social media channels. We advertise on Facebook. We also are on Artsy and First Divs platforms to reach additional audiences that may not come directly to our website. We video art in our exhibitions for our YouTube channel as well as Instagram. We post talks on YouTube, including our exhibition talk through series Art on the Rocks, which we do after each of our exhibitions. Well, Rana does anyways. We post weekly art textiles on a variety of topics like artist process notes, book recommendations from our artists and from ourselves. We also write about exhibitions in the United States and abroad, and unfortunately have written an awful lot of obituaries of artists as well. We curate online exhibitions and host them in artsy viewing rooms, like this one, Art with an Edge, that featured works that have been framed by us in-house. We host a robust website, which the pandemic gave us lots of time to go through all of our archives and scan all of our images. It's been recently redesigned with literally thousands of art images. And if you're going through it and you find anything that's not 100% right, we're still updating it on a basically daily basis. We now have several images of each piece. There's no longer just the money shot that I would take because we want to give somebody a more immersive experience into the work that they're looking at. There's side views, there's details. You just got to click the arrows. You can just go through image by image randomly on the homepage, or you can go by artist. And then there's many, many search filters as well. We have miscellaneous resources in the news and our loose thread sections. Each artist page has its own, has artworks by the artist, usually with a portrait, publications, and a short CV. As you go down the page, available works will show up first of that artist's work, followed by a limited number of sold works as well, followed by a list of links to publications that we sell on the website, whether our catalogs or books of these artists may be in that we sell. We have quite an expansive list. We continue to publish catalogs, 58 to date, and we've added books to our publishing program as well. This is the most recent. I spent the pandemic scanning and designing my second book with Arnisholt Publishing on the life of Ginge Locke. This 8-pound heavyweight tabletop book is a great read as well as being beautifully illustrated. Lakey, whose mother was a painter, trained to be a gallerist, and she preserved high-quality images from the get-go, which is unusual. We get permission to reproduce our images to publishers and museums, and we write articles on fiber art publications like Art Mobedia, Selvage Magazine, Surface Design, and Shuttle, Spindle, and Dipod. We continue to partner with museums and art centers. Last May, we curated Wordplay, Messages in Branches and Bark, work by Ginge Locke and John McQueen at the Flynn Gallery in Greenwich. More than 1,500 people visited in the 6 weeks that it was open. More than 70 people attended the John McQueen Gallery Talk and another 70 to Ginge Locke's Zoom presentation. You can see them both on our YouTube channel. We regularly loan works to non-for-profit exhibitions. Last year, we loaned work to the Wayne Art Museum in Pennsylvania, the Pittsburgh Museum in Massachusetts, the Women's Art Center of the Hamptons in East Hampton, New York, the Denver Botanical Garden in Colorado, the Claremont Lewis Museum of Art in Los Angeles, Fairfield University Art Museum in Connecticut, and Craft in America Gallery in Los Angeles. We generally agree, at least my wife does, to interviews and requests to serve as juror panelist. And to give talks like this one, the one I gave at the National, I gave one at the National Appraisers at the National Arts Club in New York in June. We also hosted continuing education sessions for designers through their association, ISID, and New England Home Magazine. This lecture was actually at the John McQueen Ginge Locke show at the Flynn Gallery. Finally, to help sell ourselves here, first and foremost, we host in-person exhibitions twice a year with curated themes and catalogs. In 2022 was Japandi, for example, which highlighted the similar sensibilities between artists working in Japan and Scandinavia. Here are works by Naoko Serino, the Jew piece in the upper left-hand, in the left corner, June Tomita, who did the colorful ikat, and Anne Henriksen, the lovely weaving on the right-hand side that's framed, which is a lot bigger than it looks because it's from the side. In Stimulus, Art in Inception, which was in 2011, we asked artists to share their inspiration as well as their work. Here is a Mariam Belinga of the Netherlands mapping pin marks on one of her favorite artists, renowned Dutch artist Herman Scholten's studio walls. Her work, Palmaset, #1, she created colorful dots of color made of thread and horsehair to reflect each of the marks on Scholten's wall. You're invited to our next exhibition, in-person exhibition, Discourse Across Generations and Continents, which opens May 4th and runs through the 12th. This was yesterday's picture of the front lobby. I can't promise that's what it'll look like when you get here, but many of these pieces will probably still be in it. The gallery will assemble an eclectic group of works that celebrate fiber arts diversity. Included will be works from fiber arts early days, 50 years ago, current mixed media works, and sculpture and pieces created in the decades between, spurring a dialogue across generations and across continents. We hope that you can come visit sometime between May 4th and May 12th. Emailers and social media announcements will begin next week, I am told, although we have been working on it. Email list or watch for updates on our Instagram, Facebook page, and Art Textile blog. To encourage you to visit, here's a sneak peek. In this picture, like I said, that may move around, we have a John McQueen sculpture in the left-hand corner. The two tapestries are by a Latvian artist, Baba Osait. You can see between those pieces a Dutch piece by Aniek Klein, and the round piece is a Norma Minkowitz crocheted work. Despite the distinctiveness, the artist and discourse share in common trait. Each possess material intelligence, what author Glenn Addison describes as a deep understanding of the material world around us, and an ability to read that material environment and the know-how required to give it form. Pictured here are details on the left of Naoko Serino. It's sort of a deceiving picture since it's going to be a wall piece. The detail in the center is from John McQueen, where we actually pulled out the centerpiece so you could see it more definitively out of willow and waxed linen. And on the right is a detail of a sphere by Norma Minkowitz out of crochet work. This group of graphic works was created over a 40-year period. An early work by Warren Seelig from the 80s, and a current work by Blair Tate in the center and Gudrun Padger from Denmark on the right. We have often seen a different sensibility amongst artists from Eastern Europe and those from Western Europe, Asia, and the United States. Artists in Eastern Europe have a history which began after World War II of using items at hand to create works such as sisal, rope, hemp, and goat hair. And there's a fierce energy and a roughness in their work. Artists elsewhere worked in traditional materials like silk, linen, and quietly refined. You're also more likely to see a backing, which you won't see in the work from Eastern Europe. Discourse will spotlight this contrast. On the left is a fabulous weaving by Zofia Butcher-Małowicz from Poland, which is one of 7 circle and square tapestries in Jack Leonard Larson's and Mildred Constantine's book, Art of the Mainstream, from her 1968 Warsaw solo exhibition. I have to say that this picture of this grouping was the first textiles that really got me excited about contemporary tapestry in the first place. And so it's pretty exciting to see it come around and be able to show it in our space, even though it's sort of hidden in the background of that photograph. And on the right is a last major available Leah Cook tapestry in this technique, which she was using in her early 1973 B&L works. Some of the works in Discourse contain an explicit message for viewers. Ginge Lackey's Anticipation, made of applewood branches, presents a question about the challenges, concerns, conflicts, and other dangers we face today, Lakey says. The question underlies the search of a way forward to a better day. The simple word hovered in thoughts for many months, she says. In Spectator, by Irina Kolsakova, originally from Russia, now working out of Germany, also has the anxiety of daily life in her mind. She uses an alter ego to illustrate her feelings. And unlike previous pieces we've had of hers, this is almost like a film strip of many panels, so it's very exciting. Annie Klein is interested in communication. In dialogue, her work is made up of 2 layers that hang in front of each other. When you change your position in front of dialogue, the interaction between the 2 layers changes, and it does as it does between the speakers. Laura Foster Nicholson's woven landscape, idyllic at first glance, reveal a concern with the natural world. In recent years, works like Rural Road Freight Train, which if you look at the bottom left, you can see the freight train all the way through the center of the piece, have moved toward recording the various ways humankind has interfered in the environment. And we're very excited about our new way of hanging this piece as well. Anyways, now I can really slow down, and thank you for inviting me to speak. I am from New Jersey, so I do talk fast. We hope to see you at Discourse. This tapestry is a brush wool tapestry from Marriott Rousseau Vermette. It was created in 1988 to one of my earlier clients so it's very exciting to have it back, again with the brushed wool and the embroidery in the center. And the basket is by Mary Merkel Hess of Iowa, which was created 34 years later in 2023. If you have any questions, my wife, who speaks a lot slower than I will, be here to join me to help you if you have any now. So I hit escape.
Stop the share.
Stop the share. I need to hit that button there. I can't get it there.
Yeah, I'm going to stop your share here. And if you could just turn on your video again. Thank you so much, Tom. That was a really interesting presentation. And we're getting a lot of comments in the chat that they really enjoyed it. So
Probably saying that I talk too fast.
Nobody said you talk too fast. So Betsy is asking, how do I follow you? And you can find browngrotta on Instagram at browngrotta arts. And if you scroll up in the chat, there are a bunch of links where you can find their website and what they have going on. And the first question we probably should have answered at the beginning is, where is your gallery?
Well, we go out of our way not to be too clear about where we are, except for during our show times, because we're not open except for 2 10-day periods a year. We have a spring show and a fall show, but we are in Wilton, Connecticut. And during those time periods, we are open to the public, but most of our sales and our viewers come from all over the globe. I sell as much out of the country as I do in the country. What has changed in the marketplace, it used to be that people went to a brick and mortar. They no longer do that. And especially in fields as specialized as ours, as I mentioned before, both our artists and our customers are all over the world. There's no one hub, one place. In fact, a couple before the pandemic, I started going back to my roots. We did a Google Maps of where our artists were and try to pick spaces where there was a concentration of them so we could go back and start photographing them in their studios. And we spent some time in the UK, and we went all the way up and down the UK. We went to Belgium to see Stephanie Jacques, and then back up to Scotland. And then we also went out to California, and we realized a lot of their studios looked a little too much alike. So was planning to go elsewhere, and then the pandemic hit. So we hope to continue that. This is something that's very exciting for us, because when I started years ago, I remember going to Ed Rosbeck's studio, and I brought all my equipment in, and he was just overwhelmed. He says, "I'm going to go walk the dogs. And if you're still here, we can talk about it afterwards." So things have really improved in this department now that it's easy to do.
Great, thank you. And just quickly, what was the dates of the exhibition that's upcoming? Is it May 12th to 14th?
May 4th to the 12th.
May 4th to the 12th, thanks. And let's see.
Well, just one thing about the shows. Our shows have always over 100 pieces to see. There is nothing that's in one show that will be in the next show. People actually create a destination for our shows. In fact, before the pandemic, we had an exhibition here where I think we had, was it like 27 artists who came from all over the world? You know, it used to be they could go to trade shows and see what other people were doing. But since SOFA really sort of died, and it was not just that, it was also because the economy changed and the international galleries were no longer sponsored. So there was less of that, of a gathering place just to see what everybody else was doing. They sort of came to come here because it's the only other place where they get to see it. We had one of our artists from Chile, her entire class came to an opening to see her work amongst her peers. We had busloads from Canada come to 2 shows in recent years. So we really try to make it worth your while to come out of, so it's not just another show. And the catalogs also make it unique.
Mm-hmm. What is your process like when you're curating one of these shows?
We'll yell at each other a lot. I make once we
Start with the theme.
We start with a theme. I come from a family where, you don't have an occasion. If there's not a theme, it wasn't a party. And it's partially as much to make it interesting to us as anybody else, because you just can't have the same show every year, what's new. And plus, we don't always believe what's new is important. We think it's what's new to our customers. So we're going to be showing stuff from the 70s that we've never shown before. So it's new to our customers, but that's not a new piece. It just has to be a good piece. And so once we've agreed on a theme, we will discuss what we may know about before we invite other artists to do so. I will blow up images to scale in a model that we've built of our space. It's like a dollhouse. And then we'll fight over what goes where. And Rana will say, "What were you thinking?" And we'll go back and forth. And then we'll go back to our lists. And if we ever add people, it's only because we're trying to fill a niche that we think we're missing, although it's hard to do that when we have so many artists. And we always over order because we know many things will not come through. This is one thing about our artists is that I don't think they follow best practices, and a lot of meant to come through, and always, things happen. And so, and it's very difficult as well. You ask for large, you get small, you ask for red, you get blue. So one of the reasons I mentioned that front hall picture is going to change, because it will, because work is still coming in. We're reframing some of them, we're rephotographing some, but it also has to get here early. Artists are advantaged by getting to us early, because to get into the classic media, you have to get the work out really early, as some of you publications would know about. We work with a crack team at my son's office, Juice Media, and they wanted, before we've even come up with the theme, which ain't going to happen, and they always want a video, which can't be done until it's installed. So we start the process early, but it's completely evolved because our artists are just the opposite. How many more hours before it has to get there?
Well, just this week, we got 3 emails saying, "Is it too late to be in the main show?"
So sometimes we build walls.
Go and juggle everything around and say, "Well, maybe, maybe not. What are you doing?"
On the other hand, we don't like to overcrowd it. I always remember the first SOFA booth I did. And I remember Jack Larson coming to my booth and asking and he loved the work. He says, "But you just got too much stuff here." So our philosophy every time since that was we do our booth, we put everything in, and then we say, what would Jack take out? And we found that sometimes that the work looked better when it wasn't so cluttered. And one of the reasons I think our booths used to stand out at art fairs is it's hard when you ran a fair, knowing that you're paying so much for square footage, you figure, well, you got to make some money on it. On the other hand, the work doesn't do itself a favor if it's too crowded. So you got to give it the space to breathe. And then the other fun part for me is agonizing. A lot of the artists are really good at what they do, but not really good at knowing how to show it to other people. So one of the great challenges for me is also figuring out how to install it. In fact, Jack once told me that I should sell kits on how to install the work. I've been buying custom hardware. Sometimes we've even had to frame it. Because sometimes, you're so close to the work, you don't see how other people see it. And I think we're really good at that. And I don't believe I understand it until I see it behind the camera.
Yeah, great answer. I think we have time for just one more question. So just briefly, is there any advice that you would give to fiber artists working today who, want to sell their work and want to show in galleries?
Well, that's tough since there's so few galleries to choose from. I do tell them that, at least in our case, they should spend some time on our website before they even bother, because a lot of the stuff we get in, we have an aesthetic. I mean, yes, there's a certain quality level. Absolutely. We take mostly people that are, I feel, are pretty important in their field. But it's got to match Rod and I's our aesthetic. We believe that if it's not something we want to live with, it will never go up. So,
Well, we do live with it.
yeah,
That's one of
we
the
do
things
live with it.
Unique about our situation.
But my point being is, if it doesn't look like the aesthetic is consistent. People used to come to our booths and say, I didn't need to see the sign of your logo. I could tell that's you. And so I think whatever gallery you go to, if you should to find someone who matches your aesthetic first. The quality is a separate issue that galleries will make their own judgments and the artists have to make their own judgments. But you don't do well to not match the aesthetic of the space that you're in. One of the other great things that happen at trade shows, I remember Sheila Hicks telling me, you really got to pay attention to who's across from you, because people aren't going to see your work if they're looking at something that's really ugly right next door. So we actually one of the negotiations we would have is who would be the booth next to us. So we would, it would make sense. And you don't do yourself any favors just to be everywhere. One of the other great problems that fiber artists have is they're so nervous they think they got to show everywhere. You don't want to create the illusion that there's more work than there is, because this stuff is slow and there isn't that much. And if you're in too many places, it actually makes you look worse, because then there's always everyone can always make the excuse, well, I can get another one because I know it's here, and there. So you're better off being selective and really picking, I think, a dealer that best reflects the aesthetic and quality of what you have, and that will mean they'll have the market. Just like sometimes, yes, we have we have one or two ceramics that we show on occasion because they show well with fiber, but people don't come to us first for that. They're coming to us for our aesthetic and for what we do. And I believe most galleries are the same way. You want to go there because you have a confidence that quality and that aesthetic will always be there, and they're coming because they want to see that, and that way your work will show well with them. You care about what's in the booth with you and beside you.
Two technical issues that we've seen changing over time that I think is worth highlighting maybe is that we're getting repeatedly asked whether or not works are signed. And I don't know whether people customarily do that. And in our field, a lot of times they don't. But for those of you who can do that, it's probably wise to do that to increase, it'll be increasingly important as your careers develop. And in the same way, we're getting asked a lot about provenance now that there is a resale market. So to the extent you can, you want to keep track of where your works are shown. And so you could give that information to a buyer or to a gallery. We have certain artists like Ed Rosbach who didn't care at all where his work was.
He signed it though.
And when he did sign, that was good. But when museums wanted to have exhibitions of his work, they would call around to other galleries and to collectors and say, do you know where this piece was? Did you see it in the show? Do you know if it was in that show? So now we try to keep a better record of that. It's not easy to do, but we do.
We're also known, because we've been doing this from the get-go, is that we keep a photographic database of every sale we've ever had. Now, our website only shows some of the sold pieces. We take off the prices and we say sold, But in the back end, we have every single sold piece we've ever sold, photographically, when we sold it to, who we sold it to. Whether it's an insurance claim, they had a water problem above them, or whether they're giving it to a museum as or they're trying to resell it, that information becomes invaluable. And most galleries, unfortunately, they deal with it like a regular retail store. Let's move on to the next thing. They could care less once that show's over. We don't. We take on things for the long haul. And we take on artists for the long haul. We're not interested in people who do one thing well. We want somebody that we can grow with. And if they stop doing that, then we stop representing them, because we really, and it's one of the reasons we're not interested in resale early on, because we were afraid that we would be competing with the artists themselves and they got to eat. What's happened is now in the resale market, because there's so much time has changed, is now we're getting early pieces that we could not get from those artists. So they're not competing with themselves anymore. And so that's pretty exciting.
Well, that's great advice and great information. And we are just about out of time for today. So I want to say thank you so much to both of you, Tom and Rhonda. Thanks for being here. And thanks to all of you in the audience for watching. We'll be back again next week, same time, same place, for Seeing/Being Seen, celebrating LGBTQIA+ voices, presented by Surface Design Association. As always, you can find all the details in our archive of almost 200 recordings at SAQA.com/textile talks. And if you enjoy Textile Talks, we would love it if you would tell a friend, post about us on social media, or consider supporting us financially with a donation at SAQA.com/TT support. I hope you all have a fantastic Wednesday. Thanks for watching. And thank you to our sponsors, who we will acknowledge right now. Thanks, everyone.